Greetings viewers, and welcome to part 2 in the 3-part series regarding concealed carry. One thing right off the bat that I did fail to mention that could be pertinent in choosing a particular firearm for concealed carry would be regarding your local laws, which is the first thing I'm going to cover in this video. Your particular state may have a restriction on magazine size. However, if you are locally purchasing the gun that you are going to be concealed carrying in the place where you live, chances are you are going to get that information and also not have access to weapons there or magazines that would not qualify for carry in your particular area, so that shouldn't be an issue. The only time you may run into a problem is if somebody that's a friend or family member gifts you a firearm and it has magazines that do not meet the restriction requirements that you are allowed to have for where you live in particular. With that out of the way, again, the first thing that I want to discuss is knowing your local laws. So I can't sit here and tell you what applies to you because I live in Florida, so I know Florida's laws and where I can carry and where I can't carry. And we do not have magazine restrictions here. That's something that personally I don't have to concern myself with. However, again, depending on where you live, you need to actually read the law. And if you don't understand it, sometimes the legalese can be a little confusing. So for example, in the state of Florida, if you actually look at the statute, it will specifically list all of the areas that you can and cannot carry your firearm. The one that is the most confusing to many people, again, in terms of that legalese and translating it into English for us normal folk, is carrying a gun in a restaurant that has a bar. So you can see what the statute specifically says here. And so I will translate that for you just so you can get an idea of what it actually means, again, in plain English. So let's just take a restaurant such as Outback or Chili's, where the restaurant comprises the entire building. However, there is a small portion of it that is dedicated to just a bar. They have a bar seating area, they may have high tops. Usually there's some sort of dividing wall or something that defines that as the bar area. So in this particular instance, you can concealed carry your firearm into the restaurant as long as you are in the restaurant portion outside of those confines of the bar area. You can sit at your table in the restaurant, you can even order a drink from the bar, and you can consume alcohol while you're carrying. However, you are not supposed to be in that area that is designated for the bar. So if you don't words good or speak legalese very well, that's kind of the translation there. So things like that may be a little bit confusing. You may want to talk to somebody that understands it a little better. A lawyer would be a great option, a law enforcement officer, somebody that can explain the law and deals with it regularly, that knows exactly what it means and how to keep yourself safe and out of trouble. So again, I can't sit here and tell you all the restrictions and requirements for every state that you may live in, what's going to apply to you and what isn't. So that is going to be the first thing that you need to do before you take your chosen firearm in whatever configuration you've decided you're going to carry it in and go out into the world. Make sure you understand the laws so you don't get yourself in trouble, because you're trying to be a law-abiding citizen, you're trying to do the right thing. Don't get yourself hemmed up and potentially lose access to owning firearms again because of a simple mistake. So with that out of the way, I can tell you that probably the #1 most asked question that I have ever personally been asked or seen asked in various formats is, should I carry with a round in the chamber? My personal answer, and the short, quick answer, so you can skip ahead in the video if you'd like, is yes, you should. And there's a reason for that. However, if you're asking that question, then chances are you're not exactly comfortable or familiar enough with your firearm yet that you want to carry with around in the chamber. You are not necessarily terrified because you've graduated to the step where you're gonna carry it and you want to go out in the world and do some good, but you're still kind of a little bit nervous and you have maybe that healthy fear and respect for the gun and you don't want to screw up and have an accident. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. However, what I can tell you is just with anything that involves firearms, you are going to have to practice, and practice some more. Because if you are carrying that firearm without a round in the chamber and something goes bad and your instinct is to draw it out and point and pull the trigger and you're pulling and it goes click and nothing happens, and you haven't practiced your malfunction drills, or you haven't practiced racking that slide the second you get it out to chamber that round, that could potentially be a fatal mistake. Also, it does not matter how much you practice. If you draw that firearm every single time and you rack the slide no matter what, you are always going to be behind somebody with an equal skill set to yours that has a round in the chamber. If you were to do a quick draw competition with your best friend and they had a round in the chamber and you didn't, 99% of the time they're going to win unless they screw something up getting that gun out of the holster and on target. So again, my personal preference and recommendation is to carry with a round in the chamber. If you're asking that question and you don't feel comfortable with it, then I suggest that you practice, get some more ammo, sign up for a training class or 2 or 5 or 10, whatever it's going to take to get you comfortable with it. Get with somebody that can work with you and get to a point where you are comfortable carrying that round in the chamber. I like to compare this sort of situation to when you first started learning how to drive. The very first time you got behind the wheel, you had the driving instructor, you got your learner's permit, and you're trying to do your on-the-road driving test. You've got the death grip on the wheel, and you were just staring straight ahead and worried about being in your lane and all the cars around you and all the lines on the road and the signs and lights and everything going on. And now that you've gotten more comfortable driving and you've been on the road a while, we're eating a cheeseburger with one hand, texting with the other, steering with our knee. Women are putting on makeup while they're going down the road and kind of not having a care in the world. So I don't mean to not have a care while you're carrying your firearm, but it's just that matter of comfort that you end up having that's going to make your life a little bit easier and potentially safer by having that round accessible to you. By having that round available as soon as you draw the firearm instead of having to go through another step. Now keep in mind as well, unless you absolutely know what situation you're going to be in that's going to require you to use your concealed carry firearm, you may not be standing on 2 feet pointing down range in a perfect shooting position firing at a bad guy. You may be in a fight for your life. You may only have access to one hand and you're trying to get your gun out while you're fighting somebody off with your other hand, and you may have practiced 100 times using that other hand to rack the slide, and all of a sudden now this hand's tied up doing something and you only have one hand and you're not sure what to do with it. So again, take away any extra additional steps that are just going to hinder you. Get comfortable with your firearm, get comfortable with having a round in the chamber, and practice, practice, practice. Sign up for some training classes, get with people that know what they're doing. Not hanging out on Bubba's back porch drinking a 12-pack, firing rounds off into the woods randomly, not being safe. Make sure you actually get some good training and some good practice reps in. So speaking of ammo and carrying, when you're going to buy ammunition to practice with at the range, or you're buying ammunition to carry on your person once you're ready to head out the door and into the world with your concealed carry firearm. So you're going to have 2 main different ammo types. One I'll refer to as target ammo. Typically you'll see this labeled as FMJ or full metal jacket, ball round, something similar to that. It's just a solid projectile. It has just a cone on the end of it. There's no special features or function. It's just a metal slug that's going down range and putting holes in typically paper targets. And then we have what are called hollow points or self-defense ammunition. Obviously the hollow point name kind of gives it away. The front of the round that's going to impact your target has a cavity basically that's designed to open and spread that round out to cause as much damage as possible. Some of the rounds may come with a red polymer tip or some sort of filling inside of that cavity, and those are typically designed to keep that cavity from getting clogged by things such as thick clothing, and that way it makes sure that it penetrates into the target so that it can spread and cause essentially as much damage as possible. So when it comes to those ammo choices between FMJ or the hollow points, when you are concealed carrying and you're out on the street intending to use your firearm to protect yourself or others, it is highly encouraged and recommended to carry a good quality self-defense or hollow point ammunition. And the hollow point ammunition, again, is designed to enter and expand and cause as much damage as possible, because again, the intention when you are shooting at a person or an animal is to kill it, not to simply wound it or hurt it or scare it off. Those are just byproducts or side effects that can happen with different shot placement. Now, when it comes to choosing a specific ammunition, personally, I carry Federal HST. You're going to talk to 100 different people and get 100 different answers on their favorite preferred round for self-defense carry. I equate it to the same thing as people arguing about Ford, Chevy, Dodge, Toyota, whatever. Everybody's got their specific one that they like, and they're going to talk crap about all the other ones. At the end of the day, any one of the main manufacturers of high quality ammunition, such as Federal, Speer, Hornady, and many others, as long as it is a reputable brand and it is actual self-defense ammunition, it is probably 99% of the time going to be just fine and as effective as each other for carrying out the same mission. You can find multiple different channels out there with people shooting each of the different rounds into ballistics gel. If you're into numbers, you can also find those charts as far as penetration depth and different figures and muzzle velocities for the different rounds that you're considering possibly carrying. But again, at the end of the day, taking all the specific numbers and data aside, any sort of high quality ammunition from a reputable manufacturer that's designed for self-defense is going to do you just fine. So what I can tell you is that carrying extra ammo is always a great option, especially if you live in a location where I mentioned has a magazine capacity restriction. So if you can only carry 6, 7, 8 rounds in a magazine, as far as I know, there's not any states that say the limit of magazines you can carry. So theoretically, you could have a bandolier of 6-round magazines on you with the ability to reload. You may only need 6, 7, 8, 10 rounds for whatever encounter you're in, but what would really be bad is if you needed 10 and you only had 6. Wolves like to run in packs, so having more ammunition at your disposal may be better than not. I have never heard anybody say, wow, I had too much ammunition and I really wish I had brought less. Some other considerations depending on what firearm and holster carrying option you've chosen, which I mentioned in the previous video. It is a lifestyle change. You are going to have to do some things differently than you normally would. You are going to have to be careful and be cognizant that you have a firearm, and some of the things that you do may actually expose them to other people who may either see that firearm and become terrified. There have been incidents where somebody who is a law-abiding concealed carry, their firearm was spotted. Somebody has pointed it out to another person who then decided to tackle that person while they were in the middle of the store, even though they were presenting no threat to anybody else, simply because they were carrying a firearm. Also, people have had their guns grabbed by other people, hence why I am not a fan of open carry, because the whole point of concealed carry is that element of surprise. If you are, let's say, in the grocery store and you're carrying in the small of your back and you reach up to get something in the top shelf, you need to make sure that your shirt is not lifting up, exposing your firearm, and when you bring your arm back down, if that's happened, it hasn't bunched up on top and now left your firearm exposed, and you're walking through the store just minding your business buying groceries and your firearm's out there for everybody to see. If you're out and about with your family and you happen to have kids and you're concealed carrying, I'm sure by now you know kids have no filter. They like to call things as they see it. One of the last things that you need happening while you're out and about and you don't want people knowing that you have a firearm is, for whatever reason, your kids blurting something out loud about you having a gun. So make sure you talk to them about that ahead of time and let them know that that is not acceptable, that they don't need to talk about it, don't need to tell anybody about it, we don't need bringing attention to it, that nothing of that sort needs to happen, and it's just to be a secret between all of you guys, and the only person that's ever going to know about it is a bad guy if the situation arises when it's too late for them. So while you're out and about carrying your firearm, you may end up going somewhere where potentially you didn't know that it was an issue that you can't carry your firearm. So for example, I did not do my research ahead of time. I went to the large aquarium that is in Atlanta and I did not think about it. Again, I didn't call ahead and find out, but they do not allow you to carry firearms in there. After the fact, it made sense. Probably the last thing that you need is somebody in there firing a bunch of rounds into the glass that's holding back thousands of gallons of water in an enclosed building where there's a lot of people. So it makes sense. But when you get to the entrance and you find out, hey, there's security and I can't bring my gun in here, it's not one of those, there's just a sign and that's all the security that is in place. They have metal detectors and they make sure that you do not bring that sort of thing inside. So you'll probably more than likely need to leave it in your vehicle. And I can tell you that leaving a loose firearm in your vehicle is not a great idea. Having some sort of lockbox or way to secure the firearm in your vehicle accessible to you when you're traveling is a great option, because if that were to happen, you can then secure it. Again, speaking on that topic, I will be covering that in another video because firearm security is absolutely 100% important, making sure you keep your firearms out of hands of people that don't need to have them. While carrying your firearm, a lot of people can kind of feel empowered and like you're some kind of superhero walking around and it's your job to save the day. And I can't tell you exactly what situations you may or may not be involved in. You can practice, plan, and think about 100 different scenarios, and the one that's going to happen to you is that 101st one that you didn't plan for. So situational awareness and keeping yourself out of situations that have the potential to go bad is going to be your number one best bet. And the only time that your firearm should come out and be employed is, again, when it's needed now, not as a threat, not to fire warning shots, not to measure sizes with somebody else and see who's going to come out on top. The last thing you want to do is even be involved in a justified use of force shooting and spend the next rest of your life fighting court battles and being sued and having your name plastered all over the news and social media, even though you did the right thing and you know that you did that, but the rest of the world is painting you as the bad guy. There's numerous names out there that I can think of, and I'm sure you guys have seen and heard of yourself. So just a quick video again covering some things that you should think about while you're concealed carrying. So in the next video, I plan to cover any sort of situation where you may need to actually employ that firearm like I mentioned, and the things that you can expect to happen during and after said incident. So hopefully you found some of the information that's contained in this video and the previous one useful. Stay tuned for the next one. Please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, whatever you feel the need to do. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.